Hello, hello. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Today we're speaking with Ben Schenkman, author of My Boss is the Devil, for a much anticipated part two of our marketing discussion that we started, I want to say a few weeks ago now.
Yeah,
Um,
probably.
and with our workshops, we were debating whether or not which ones to make a part one, a part two of, but we came to the conclusion that marketing in itself is just such an important element of all things indie. And that's part of the big thing about being an independent or a self-published author is that you don't have the publishing house behind you. You have to, as amazing as a story as you write, you have to make sure other people can read it. And unfortunately, no one's going to hold your hand through that process. It is something that we all struggle with. So, without further ado, we're going to get into some more key points about it and things that have worked for Ben and things that haven't. So, right off the bat, what is an ARC reader or an ARC reader? What are the benefits? What should you look for? And really, how many do you need?
ARC reader. So ARC stands for Advanced Reader Copy.
Mm,
So it's saying you're an ARC reader is like an advanced reader copy reader. So like it's ATM machine a little bit.
okay. Yeah.
But that's what we call them. We call them ARC readers. But what we send them are ARCs, so advanced reader copies. What are they? They are people who want access to books before they are published,
Yeah.
and the only payment that ARC readers receive is the book, the access to the book, and that's actually usually ebooks. Some authors do physical ARCs, but I think those are rare because of the costs associated with them. So for the most part, ARCs are ebooks that you give to readers who agree to post a review on or close to release day in exchange for having access to the book early. They're very important because the best thing that you can do for your book is to get a lot of reviews on it, reviews and ratings. It's nice to say that a book can stand on its own regardless of how well received it is.
Mhm.
But the reality is, strangers aren't going to take a chance on your book if they don't think anyone has read it.
Yeah.
Like, it's rare, right? And the thing about arcs are these are usually people that you do not know.
Mhm.
Okay. Your family are usually not arcs. Maybe your friends can be arc readers, but there's a level of my book needs to be in the hands of people who will review it honestly. And
Mhm.
it's not that your friends and family won't review it honestly, it's that they are more likely to give your book a pass if it's maybe
Yeah.
not, if it's maybe got some things that might bother your average reader, your friends and family aren't necessarily going to be as upfront about it. So arcs are intended to be honest reviews. Not like brutally honest. We don't want people to be jerks about it if they
Right.
don't like the book, but we want them to be honest. Some authors have ARC reader policies in that they do not accept ARC readers if the ARC readers don't agree to say not post a review if it's less than 3 stars. There's debatable
Okay.
not ethics, I guess. Like you can ask for whatever you want. It if they're going to post a review, it has to be honest in deference to not harming your rating
Mhm.
on whatever platform it's on. You could certainly say, hey, if it's less than a 3 star, I really would appreciate you giving me the feedback privately and not posting it,
Yeah.
because, I'm giving you this book early and it's getting a review that's low is going to hurt rather than help.
Well, it's one
So
thing. It's one thing to get a two-star review when you have 300 reviews. It's another to get a two-star review when you have four. Right?
yeah,
That is gonna have an impact for
it
sure.
it will absolutely tank your numbers. I don't have a policy that says you can't read my books unless you're going to promise not to post a review that's less than 3 stars. I'm just saying, what do we look for in ARC readers? Because that was like part of the next question is some people look for ARC readers to agree to certain terms.
Mhm.
That being, you agree to post on review day. You agree that if the review is too low, maybe you don't post it. You agree to give at least some information, not just book good, but like post
Yeah.
some type of quality
It sound
review.
And it feels like there has to be kind of a fine line there because on one hand you don't want to post like the full synopsis. You still want people to read the book. You don't want it to be a big spoiler. It's an interesting, so if I'm understanding the concept of an ARC reader, it's that this way when the book is launched, you already have like 15 like 4 or 5 star reviews on Amazon and this helps get the ball rolling. So
Right.
this is different from a beta reader, which is reading to help you kind of edit and format the book. Like by the time somebody gets an advanced reader copy, that book is finished.
It should be. So
Okay.
here's one of the problems with a lot of ARCs currently, and I've seen this in different ARC communities,
Mm.
and honestly, this is pervasive of not just the indie verse, but also trad publishing, is a lot of ARCs that are going out are actually not ready for publishing,
Interesting.
which is a problem. The whole idea of an ARC is it is supposed to be effectively a publishable version of your book.
Mm.
If you don't have the cover, fine. If you don't have the back cover blurb, fine.
Yeah.
But the content of the book should be edited, proofread, ready for publishing. Your ARC readers may find a typo here or there because
Right.
it is inevitable that a book that gets published, regardless of who publishes it, will have a couple typos in it.
Yeah.
I edit my books myself. I have them done by a professional editor. I have someone that proofreads them. And then my ARC team usually finds one or two things that everyone else missed.
Yeah.
And then, even then, once it gets published, it's going to have one
Yeah.
or two errors. And
Well,
like
that's
people forgive that. That's normal.
I was gonna say that's also the nice thing about doing ebook copies that you can just go in, tweak it, and be done.
Yeah, but the difference is if you're doing ARCs before they're ready for publishing, that actually can hurt you. You want ARC readers to get the version of your book that is its best
Yeah.
because they're going to write a review based on it. So definitely don't send out ARCs if it's really your beta copy
Mhm.
and you haven't finished editing and it's not ready to go. Like I could send out an ARC if it was done with editing, but maybe it was ready to go to my proofreader if I really felt like it. But even that would feel like a stretch to me because I want my ARC readers to get the true, this is what it's going to be like on day one when the book drops.
Well, it's also the case of if you're not paying somebody to read your book and they're taking time out of their day, reading a book takes time. You want that to be, not everyone is going to read your book. So if you have people who are willing to do it, don't abuse that power. Take advantage of it and do it the right way. That's interesting. I never really considered the things that you could do to help like get eyes on your book before it even goes out. So going into your launch with reviews already on Goodreads and Amazon and stuff, I imagine makes a huge difference.
It really does. And there's a number. So um, depending on how you go about it,
Mhm.
there are different platforms. And most of the platforms, so like there's Booksprout and Book Sirens, but then there's also NetGalley, and then there's also just privately managing ARC readers.
Mhm.
So I do a combination of things. Everything requires some information about the potential ARC reader, and then you, the author, need to review them to make sure that that person it looks like they enjoy the kind of book that this is. Like I've had people who have applied to be an ARC reader. I have a form on my website.
Mhm.
And one of the questions I ask is send me a link to your Amazon reviews.
Oh,
And I,
so you can quality control the type of reviews they're giving as well.
yeah, and like I don't look for are they only giving positive reviews? I look for do they read urban fantasy?
Mhm.
Because if they don't read urban fantasy, they're probably not going to like my book. And I've had a couple people who have mistaken my books for, say, paranormal,
Yeah.
which is really more geared towards like romance, to which I've reached out to a few to say like, "Hey, this is an urban fantasy book. There are no spicy times in this book. As long as you're on board with that, like you can be an arc reader for me, but I want you to buy into that concept rather than be disappointed
Right.
when the book isn't what you expect." In other platforms, you maybe can't contact them directly like that, but you can look at what other books they've read, other reviews that they've posted.
Mhm.
If I'm doing a month on NetGalley, I review everyone who applies to be an advanced reader, and I go look at their reviews. I had one reader that I rejected because they posted no review higher than 3 stars, and every one of their reviews was like a snarky, takedown
Yeah,
of the books. And I'm like, then why would I want to like
right.
you're allowed to curate your experience as an author as much as the reader curates their experience of who they want to read for. So like make sure that your ARC readers are a good fit for you and your books. And then you'll have a better chance of having a launch day that you'll get a bunch of 4 and 5 star reviews.
I just wanted to know when it comes to getting your book out there, how do you go about getting your book into bookstores, into like libraries? Have you found that to be fruitful for yourself?
Let's go with the most traditional way of doing it, but then also why a lot of indies don't. So
Yeah,
the most traditional way of getting into bookstores is so in addition to publishing on like Amazon KDP, you can also publish your book on Ingram Spark.
yeah.
Most libraries and booksellers buy their books through Ingram Spark directly. In order to have your book purchased by bookstores, you have to have your book marked as returnable. Booksellers don't actually buy your book. They effectively rent your book.
Mm.
And then if it doesn't sell,
There,
they reserve the right to return your
I've
book.
seen a few of these go viral on Twitter and whatnot, where like basically like people are returning books or whatnot to try to stick it to the man, and then it just ends up with the indie author gets a bill, essentially.
So that's different. That's different. That's more like I bought an ebook and I read it and then I returned it.
Mm.
Like that's like individuals sticking it to the man,
Yeah.
but booksellers, that's just how it works.
Okay.
Like it is par for the course. They buy your book. Like let's say they buy a case of your books
Mm.
and it doesn't sell, they're going to return a case of your books and then you're either on the hook for having the books shipped to you
Yeah.
or they destroy it, meaning they rip the front cover off and they destroy the book, and then that's cheaper for you as an author, but then you don't get the
Then
inventory
yeah,
back.
authors.
There have definitely been plenty of indie authors that have been burned by returns in that they end up owing a bunch of money to Ingram Spark for the returns, which is why most indies that I know and me personally, I do not enable returns on my books because it's not worth the gamble because just because your book is in a bookstore does not mean your book is going to sell at the bookstore.
So if you don't enable returns, the bookstore still has the books, no?
No, no,
Oh,
no.
well, okay.
If you don't enable returns, the bookstore
Won't take it.
could buy your book, but they won't. You
It
could
it,
con
re it reduces the risk for them. Why would they? Yeah.
You could convince a bookstore to buy your book without returns, like, but that's more like I'm a regular, I know somebody, they'll take a chance and order 5 of my books and put them on the shelf or whatever. So the big ones like Barnes and Noble and whatnot, you can work with individual Barnes and Nobles to get your book into that store.
Mhm.
But even if you don't enable returns, there's still ways to get your book into physical stores. So, number one, let's talk about libraries.
Yeah.
Okay. The best way to get your book into a library is to ask. Contact the library. They have a collections person. This is not like collections where they're going to repo your
Right. Yeah.
card.
They're not
This
taking your credit. Yeah.
this is the librarian who is responsible for curating the collection of the library.
Mhm.
And so, for example, my books are at my local library because I contacted them and said, "Hi, I am a local author. I would love it if you stocked my book at your library. Here's the info." And they liked the cover. They like supporting local authors. So my books are there. Literally, the first one, I showed up and donated a copy of it to the library. You're not going to make money selling your books to libraries. They're only going to buy a couple copies because the intention of the library is to get your books into the hands of people who are members of the library. So like even the big names, they're not buying 15 copies of Wind and Truth. They're buying 1 or 2 copies.
People are cycling them
Yeah.
out, and then they're not gonna
So
go buy it. You're in a unique position where you have a trilogy where people could potentially go off and buy the second and third on their own. But the reality is, if you're going to the library, you have all the free books in the world. Why would you pay for a book?
Yeah, which is why I actually so books 2 and 3, the library
Oh,
purchased
they
copies
have.
of those
Nice.
books.
Nice, nice.
So like, yeah, I made a couple bucks off of Ingram or Amazon or whatever. But your best bet is local libraries because you can establish yourself as a local author. But
Mhm.
any library, you could reach out to any library's collections person and see if they want to carry your book.
Yeah.
They may or may not. That's up to you.
Mhm.
Now,
Understand.
outside of libraries, local bookstores, independent bookstores,
Mhm.
many of them offer consignment of books, meaning I bring a book to you, you sell it, and the terms are usually like 60-40. 60% goes to the author, 40% goes to the bookseller for
Mhm.
having to hold the inventory and sell the book.
Right.
Some stores charge you a fee for consigning your book.
Mhm.
And frankly, don't waste your money on that.
Okay.
Find your local bookstores that do not charge consignment fees and establish a relationship with those bookstores.
Mhm.
So, for example, just to shout out a local bookstore in Northampton, Massachusetts, my books are at Booklink Books.
Mhm.
And Booklink is fantastic, and they do not charge a consignment fee. As long as they look at your book and they like it, they will consign it. Because, like, there's a lot of bad self-published books out there. I don't blame them for being selective, but I showed up with a professional looking book
Yeah.
and they said, "Great, we're going to cover that." And now like I've sold probably 10 copies across the 3 books at this small independent bookstore. I have my books in another independent bookstore in the next town over from there that
Mhm.
don't charge consignment fees. So you can get into independent bookstores without having them buy it from Ingram Spark because you can just consign your books there personally.
It's hard as an indie author. I mean, I know this and I'm it's feeling reiterated. Like, yeah, to get that guy who's gonna buy 1,000 books from you. That's yeah, but that's not
Who
what we're here for.
who's gonna buy 1,000 books? Like,
Right?
e unless I'm a New York Times bestselling author, like my books aren't flying off of the shelves at the
Yeah.
local store. Because again, that gets into things that are available for sale
Mhm.
versus marketing. So getting your books into bookstores does not actually market them. It
No.
only makes them available inventory. And then the problem is, how do I get people to the store to buy my books? So like if I got my book onto the shelves of Barnes and Noble 2 towns over, I would want to get in touch with them to do a book signing event.
Well, it's that, and then it's also it's one thing if your book is on the shelf. It's another thing if it's on the table.
Yeah.
And it's all these, if it's on a corner shelf or a back shelf, if it's on a local author's table, if it's in a sci-fi section, wherever it may be, there's all these different factors that come into play. And because we are just one person, it's if Barnes and Noble's here does it somewhere and Barnes and Noble's in another town does it in a different way, it's good to have them. I think it's always nice to have more locations where it's available. But like you said, like just because it's there doesn't necessarily mean much. Without being a downer about it. Like it is really cool that your book is in all of these places. And I think it's a testament to you as an author as well. And the fact that when it comes to self-publishing, well, and just on all counts, like this is a very professional looking book. It's very well formatted on the inside. It's got nice cover art, like everything lines up with it. And I think when we're fighting for voice, we're fighting for space in that environment. It's hard because there's a lot of weeds out there, and you gotta stand out somehow. When it comes to developing your brand as an author, how do pen names play a role?
So ironically, I don't have a pen name for my writing. I do have a pseudonym for my audiobook narration because I'm taking a few audiobook jobs that are maybe things that I don't want associated with my real name.
Valid.
Uh, so so the pen names are often more about privacy than they are about building a brand. You
Okay.
have to build a brand around your name, regardless of what that is. So I've built my brand around being Ben Schenkman, urban fantasy author and audiobook narrator. If I changed my pen name to Braun Shankerman, I would start from scratch because no one knows who that is.
Yeah.
And so some people do it because they don't they want the privacy. They don't want this part of their life associated with their mundane jobs because let's face it, indie authors have day jobs. We
Yeah.
just do.
Yeah.
Very few indie authors have the luxury of writing full time. And those that do, it doesn't matter if you used a pen name or your real name because you built your brand around whatever it is that you picked.
Yeah.
Some people choose pen names because they write across genres, and what they don't want is someone picking up a Ben Schenkman book thinking it's urban fantasy and then finding that it's paranormal romance
Yeah.
because those audiences are not always the same thing. Those are kind of close. So, like, you're fantasy versus sci fi. If you're not a very established author whose readers trust you to write whatever it is that you write well.
Mhm.
Some people like to separate that by pen names, but some don't. Like I'm gonna have eventually. I have some ideas for some post-apocalyptic fantasy or even some epic fantasy. I'm not gonna choose a pen name because I'm just gonna make the books distinct.
Yeah.
Like the books are just going to have to stand out differently and be marketed differently. It's like, but I want the connection to, hey, you know this guy who's got a series on Amazon that's
You're already established. Like,
yeah,
why start from scratch? It
right.
makes total sense. I do hear you from a privacy perspective, though. That's one of the things that we experience is that when we curate and we'll get a name, an email address, and the book. We don't know what the author looks like. We don't know if it's a pen name. I have written contracts, two pen names on accident before. Like mistakes happen. And a lot of times, like I really like the anonymity of like, yeah. Like you could be Ben Shankman or you could be Ron Shankerman. I have no clue.
Yeah.
And I like that because at the end of the day, nine and a half times, 10 times out of 10, I don't care who you are. If you write a good story, it overcomes all of that, in my opinion.
And we have to be careful because sometimes people will use pen names to distance themselves
Yeah.
from drama that they created under another name or pen name. And that's a little problematic. More problematic are people who use pen names to establish credentials or they want to check boxes around diversity
Yeah.
or inclusion that they don't personally possess. And then that's a whole different problem. That's happened a number of times
Mhm.
in the indie space is we've had people who have represented themselves falsely under pen names. But like for the most part, people choose pen names mostly for the anonymity and distancing this part of their life from the rest of it.
A lot of people have day jobs. Like we've had authors that are lawyers and this and that, and then they write high fantasy and they want to keep the two of those very separate, which I completely understand. Next speed round question. How important are book reviews and what are some of the best ways to encourage readers to leave them organically?
Yeah, so book reviews are massively important. One of the ways that you can ask readers to leave reviews is at the end of your book. Like at the end of your book, you can say, hey, if you like this book, please do consider leaving a review on your favorite platform. That's literally what it says at the end of my books. Or at least it does now. I don't know if the first one did, but it says it at the end. Hey, please review the book. Some
Yeah.
people even put a link in at the end of the book for people reading ebooks
Mhm.
to go directly to the leave a review page.
Yeah.
It's questionable whether or not platforms like Amazon always like that. Sometimes they don't like links like that. So I don't do that, but I do. You put it's called a call to action. I
Yeah.
put a call to action at the end of the book saying, hey, please, please leave a review because it really helps. You can also, arcs are not the only time that you can give away books. You can also just look for reviewers. You can say, hey, I have this book. I'm looking for people to review it. I will give you a free copy in exchange for an honest review. There are services and platforms that do that. So yeah, reviews are massively important. Getting them organically is hard, which is why a lot of these services exist to get ratings and reviews. Like I don't support anyone who pays for reviews specifically, but if you're paying for a review service in that it helps match up readers and reviews, there's not everyone likes it, but it's called Pubby, and there's a lot of slop in Pubby, but there are also a lot of good books. And you can use that to get your book seen by people But in order to get your book reviewed on those sites, you have to give reviews of other books. And
Mm,
it's not a review swap because that's against the terms of service for Amazon. So whatever services is that they provide, they match up people and books without crossing the streams of reviewing each
interesting.
other's stuff. So like not everyone likes Pubby. Some people have had a good experience. Some people have had bad ones. Your mileage may vary on things like that. Uh, but that's why they exist because it's hard to get reviews out there.
That's no, that's fair. And I think going back to your point about the call to action at the end of a story, I think there's no better place to put it. Because if you've read to the end of the story, you like the story, you read to the end of it, that's the call to action. Maybe even putting a QR code that links to it or something like that. And I have to say, having read a plethora of indie books now, I'm pretty confident the majority of them have the little, hey, whether you liked it or not, would really appreciate an honest review. It means a lot. And like the other thing is that when it's from the indie sphere, if like you catch a typo or something like that, you can leave a review. The authors will read the reviews and then probably go and make the amendments. And
Uh,
like it's cool to see the turnaround there as well.
so whether or not I should, I read every single one of my reviews. There are some authors
Right
that
before I go to
literally,
bed, they
yeah,
haunt me at night.
yeah. So some authors don't, for
Yeah.
their own mental health, they don't touch their reviews. But I get too much dopamine, and honestly, if there was a legitimate criticism, I would want it.
Yeah, that's my thinking as well. As someone who doesn't write, so I don't have the experience. I feel like any feedback, whether constructive or not, like it's one thing if you just give a 1 star no review, like don't do
That's not worth
yeah,
anything.
that's not helpful. But if you have like actual feedback, like, hey, I felt like chapter 4 was just a bit, you can go through and check it out and see for
Yeah,
yourself.
the pacing was off or
Yeah.
whatever.
What methods do you use to keep readers engaged between book launches?
So I did relatively rapid release in that I released a book in the series about every 6 months, which is relatively fast
Yeah.
for indie authors. It's not rapid release if I release every month, but like it was pretty good. But I have a newsletter. The people who have signed up to be my personal ARC team, I
Mhm.
keep in touch with them on updates about the books that I'm writing, about what's going on. My newsletter is also a place where I highlight other indie authors, talk about book deals and sales, giveaways. And
Yeah.
so, like, your newsletter as an author is one big way to stay in touch with both your reader base and your ARC readers because they're kind of the same thing there. Uh, but I'd say my newsletter is the primary way that I keep in touch with people.
In your newsletter, do you offer short stories? Do you send things out? Like how
Yeah.
often do you use it?
So I send out a monthly newsletter,
Okay.
but the first when you sign up for my newsletter, you get a prequel short story to the current series. So to the Devil You Know series,
Yeah.
you get a short story called The Thief of Joy, which is the prequel.
Okay.
So it's called a reader magnet.
Yeah.
Reader magnets are a great way for building out your newsletter. I also do a lot of things on BookFunnel where you're using your reader magnet to attract readers to join your newsletter. I usually have some kind of giveaway. Either it's another BookFunnel for full-length books that are free. Maybe there's a Stuff Your Kindle event. Maybe there's other stuff. But they're all almost always sales and freebies that I'm highlighting once a month, and other things. Again, like there's an indie author that I'm supporting who was doing a Kickstarter. I had information about their Kickstarter in the newsletter, but then I also, like I said, have updates about my own writing and my own efforts in publishing.
I think a big thing with newsletters is not just sending out a newsletter because you need to, but sending one out because you have something to say. I think that's when it can get really like you're not trying to sell everyone every time. It's all about finding that balance because I think part of the reason why I'm not signed up to newsletters is that it's something that I need to be doing for YPQ that I have finally. That's actually on Tuesday. So tomorrow I'll be releasing our first newsletter. Like, yeah, there's a bunch of things that you can talk about and this and that, but then it's figuring out how to not bore people and whatnot. But I think at the same time, the people who are there want to be there. And you have to recognize that like they're not signed up to your newsletter because they don't want to hear from you. They're signed up for your newsletter because they want to hear from you.
Mhm.
So let them hear it in a positive way.
Yeah.
And then the final question with the final 3 minutes is
Okay.
What marketing assets should every indie author try and have ready to go before launch day? Whether it be like graphics for ads, blurbs, at like posters.
It really depends on what you're planning to do for launch. I
Mm,
would say you need to have at least a decent number of media assets,
yeah.
whether that, what's really popular or has been popular are like the trope images. It's your book cover, but then with a little bunch of little blurbs about what different tropes exist
Oh,
in
yeah,
your
yeah.
books. It's like, this book's got, my trope image is like this book's got a giant cat and a goth witch, and it's this and it's that.
Yeah.
So like trope images are good. It's a good way of getting people like kind of a teaser about what's in your book. Book trailers, I have been marketed at for a million book trailers. As far as I am aware, book trailers are worthless, just to be perfectly clear.
I've seen a few and they've never really got me locked into
No.
anything.
If you can do one yourself, there are plenty of people who do little book trailers for free in Canva for themselves. Like,
Mhm.
then maybe do it. Do not pay someone to make a book trailer for you. It is a grift. It
Yeah.
is a scam. There is no, like, if they're charging you money for, like, again, every day I get someone contacting me about would I like a book trailer? The answer is no. So having your own images for media, because you're going to be posting on Instagram and Facebook and Blue
Yeah.
Sky and all that other stuff. So you're going to need enough assets to be able to vary your posting. But other than that, launch is really about getting it out there.
Mhm.
So around launch, I try to schedule podcasts and interviews.
Yeah, yeah.
So, for example, I just released my second audiobook
Mhm.
like last week.
Okay.
And so I've booked interviews on book talk shows that I've been on. I've been reaching out to podcasts to get on or get back on. And I've been, you can do written interviews for different websites that'll promote indie work. It's a shotgun approach. Like you got to just get it out there.
We're still in this throwing spaghetti at the wall phase of life, honestly. I'm gonna have to pick your brain about these podcasts because I'm always looking for stuff like that as well. I hate TikTok with the bane of my existence. But that's
It's unavoidable to an
yeah,
extent.
I
Like
know.
I've had so many good connections. So the indie author community on TikTok is fantastic. So is the VA and narration community. So it's worth getting into, but there's a lot to wade through.
So on that note, I'm just eyeing the time. We got 25 seconds left. Just want to say a huge, huge, huge thank you. Like these talks are always so informative and like just couldn't be more grateful for your time. But if you forget, my boss is the devil. It's Ben Shankman. If you ever need something, contact either of us. And just thank you again for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.